All right. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and I am flying solo tonight, but not entirely solo. I got my good buddy, Mr. Drew Gregory here, who's joining me. I'm running solo amongst the co-hosts, Drew, okay?
Okay. All right.
The co-hosts are beat up this week. I mean, they've taken take one for the team for me and let me take nights off, and it's my week to kind of run the charge for them. So Deacon, unfortunately, found out today he's got the Rona, so he's not feeling well. He's stuck there in good old snowy Colorado. I say snowy Colorado, and I got like a foot and a half here in New York. It's actually like snowed in pretty much.
We still have nothing.
Week off. Yeah. So it's nothing.
Snow
it's
here. We have nothing here. I mean,
in
like
Ohio?
Still nothing in Cleveland, like the Cleveland, Akron area, at least where I am, a little south, more closer to Akron. Nothing all year long, except for the one time when we took our little girl home from the hospital. That one day, that was it.
Go figure. The one time. Yeah, we are. I mean, you probably could go 2 hours up and you'd run into a foot of snow.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we're at in Buffalo, dude, it's just like this funnel, like between we're getting the beginning of Lake Ontario fronts and then the end of Lake Erie fronts. So like we just get crushed with snow, and it went like in the rainy season too. Yeah, you get pounded with rain.
Yeah,
not really looking forward to that. Now that I'm living in Buffalo, not really looking forward to that this spring. But it is what
Buffalo is brutal. Everyone knows that. If you watch football games, you understand Buffalo is brutal. The snow's always there on Sundays once you get to about mid-December.
Yeah,
January,
they have the quote that says it's. I can't really quote it verbatim, but basically they say when it's bad for them, it's just right for us. They say that, but then they still lose to the Patriots in the run game, and that's no bueno.
Oh man, but didn't they beat them last time? Recently, they beat them in Foxborough.
Yeah, when they
so there you go.
When they're not in 45-mile sustained winds, they beat them. Yeah,
yeah, right.
But they don't have a good run game, so they didn't win the first round. But by the looks of it, if things stay consistent, they're going to play a third time in the playoffs. So that'll be interesting to say the least.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, how was your Christmas? How was your New Year? The big holidays with now with the two little young ones running around. Well, I should say one running around, two. Second one isn't doing much running.
Just eat, sleep, poop sort of thing. Isn't that what they say? That's just kind of what she does, right? So it's pretty much like a bass. I mean, I'm pretty much that's all they do is just live, just eat, and I guess they sleep at some point. We know they do sleep, but they have no eyelids, but still they do sleep, and then they just pee and poop. So that's pretty much my daughter right now. Sophia is just doing the same thing. She's almost hitting that 20-inch mark, so she's almost a citation, a trophy, but not quite. But she's good. The family's good. Christmas was good. It's just different with two little ones. Anyone out there listening, watching that has two young ones, you feel my joy and my pain at the same time. So I'm excited to have a little break today. I try to get some work done here, and things are starting to kind of loosen up. She's a little over a month old, but of course, she wasn't 6 weeks early. She was like a month and a half early. So she's technically should be like a week old right now. Right. But anyway, things are starting to get a little bit better. And then I'm getting a little bit of work done, but I'm excited to be here, Bailey, because I'm not getting as much in my work, as you know, it's in the fishing world. So it's usually it's fun, right? It involves fishing, somewhat fun, but, I'm excited because I get a little break, dude, from all this. And I get to just hang out with you, talk a little fishing, debate it like you and I always do. And we're going to have a good time. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I just real quick, I want the record to show that in the past, Drew has compared bass fishing to dating, but now has compared a bass to his new daughter. So it always comes back to a bass.
That's true. It does. I did put her on a catch board. I did put her on the measuring board. That's how I know the length. And, we'll see. The pediatrician's measurement was a little bit different on their measuring thing. I guess I'll take theirs as gospel, but the catch board was pretty cool having her on that. So,
yeah, I'd seen that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But dude, before we get into, for folks tuning in tonight, we're going to be kind of talking very kayak centric stuff, but this could really even apply to, for folks that are in the boater world or whichever. I mean, there's still stuff that you guys can take from this, but Drew and I are going to talk about this on the foundation of kayak fishing, because that's what we know best. And it's just going to be really interesting because I feel like folks talk about this, they highlight this, but they don't really kind of debate the two really different styles of kayak fishing and where kayak. I mean, people always attribute kayaks to like bank, fishing the bank. Don't go offshore at all. I mean, look at what's going on with the bass event at Grand Lake. You can't go, what is it, 150 feet or something like that?
Right.
But either way, before we get into that, I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit because we are in the off season here for us Northerners. And there's a handful of kayak anglers right now that you could pretty much call like almost full season touring pros.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like it's their gig. Like obviously you'll have a YouTube channel or side businesses relative to fishing that you're working on, but like, kayak fishing tournaments is like your deal. Like it's top of the priority list for you guys. So there's like, there's you, Christine Fisher, Guillermo, Russ Snyders. I mean, I would refer to you guys as kayak, like pro kayak anglers.
Jody, Cody, Matt
there's
Scott.
There's a list of them. It's building each year, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, Josh Stewart. There's a lot. Yeah, it's getting there.
Yeah, and I think with that, I'm just curious for a kayak angler. Like, I feel like priorities are a little bit different when you take like a guy with a boat, obviously, because he's got to get an engine, he's got to get Raptors or his poles or trolling motor. I mean, you can still get a trolling motor for a kayak, but like, what does that look like? What does the off season look like to you? What does your priority list look like before it starts?
Yeah, I mean, it really is pretty similar. I mean, but you just take either different components. So I've got a new, this sounds crazy. I got the new Tour Pro from Motor Guide, like the big one, you know what I mean? That looks like what it is. It looks like a rock on the front, I got that, right? So it's 105-pound thrust. Now I had an XI5 and I was running that 105-pound thrust, but now I got that one because that's a true cable steer. So I can use my foot pedal. So I got to install that. Still haven't installed it. I've got to, get new boats. And if you wrap your boats, I have one that's wrapped. I don't really do wraps. Realtree just did one time for me, but you got to get that kind of all going. New stickers, if you will, decals, I'm about to order my new rods and reels from 13 any day now. So I can get them in and start rigging them up, get them set up. So it's a lot of the same stuff. The different stuff, is definitely going to be just that it's new kayaks. They have one boat, but once you become a person like everyone you just mentioned, that's a quote unquote PKA, like a professional kayak angler or an aspiring professional kayak angler that's taking it serious, you're always going to have more than one kayak. Most all of them, once they get serious, will understand. Even like look at the Hobie side of things. They've got a big Hobie Pro Angler 14. What are you in, like a 12?
12.
Okay, you're in a 12, but there's like a 12 or 14, but that's a big wide boat. But they also have the Outbacks they're a lot faster, and a lot of guys prefer those in certain waters, right? So it's really, to be versatile and to really get every little bit of advantage you can, you're probably going to have 2 or 3 boats. So on the PKA side of things, you're probably getting that whole lineup of boats figured out. Which 2 or 3 am I going to use this year? Looking at the schedule, I might need a skinny water, small kind of lightweight boat, or I might need a more motor centric boat for the tournaments like BASS and KBF that allow motors. So yeah, just kind of getting all that geared up, and then ordering lures and stuff like from Z-Man, my main lure sponsor line, just the same Bass Boat World stuff really. So
yeah. I've seen a bunch of more people do that now, like bringing backup kayaks and such like that. And man, it's smart. It's logical, especially if like this is what you do majority of the year. For me though, I haven't gotten to that level too, like just because like this is gonna be like my first actual year like really trying these bigger circuits. But then two, like I don't know how the heck I'd car top 2 kayaks. I don't think that would work out very well.
See, that's the other thing in the off season. If that's what you're moving towards, then you got to start investigating a trailer. Yeah. You know what I mean? And getting a trailer hitch on your vehicle, which is when I know what you drive. It's like what is it, like a Nissan?
It's Nissan Altima, but Tyler Cole actually showed me at back at Possum Kingdom. He stayed with me for one of the nights leading up to practice, and he drove a Nissan Altima too. And he's like, "You got to get this aftermarket kit. You can get a trailer for your Altima." He's showing me all this stuff, and I was just like, "Dang, all right, maybe it does change the game. I have to get a trailer."
You could,
yeah.
Let me propose something to you, dude. Listen,
all right.
I know you got a Hobie here. You got Hobie on the screen. We all love Hobies and their pedal drives. It's top notch, but you can get a Crescent Ultralight retail. I think they're like $699, $799. It's like and the CK1 might be like $899. It's not much. And I might know a guy. That can help you out. But anyway, Hobie does not. I don't know if you're actually on their team or not. I can't remember if you were technically. Okay, you're on the team, so
team.
they may or may not allow this, but they don't make paddle kayaks anymore, correct?
No,
I don't
not that
think
I
they
see.
do. And we don't make pedal kayaks. So I'm just saying, if they would allow it, there could be some spots where you could throw that little boat in and slide into a little creek. But we'll get into the conversation later. That's probably never what you're going to do. So it's all good. But I'm just saying that's a good combo to have as a crescent and a Hobie. It's a nice little 1-2 punch for all kinds of, all water types. And you can zig
I'll
and
have my
zag.
guy contact your guy, and then our guys will talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. In the back of an alley, dark alley,
Yep.
dark van.
Exactly. Yep. Oh, good grief. But yeah, so really getting into today's show, what we wanted to talk about for folks that are tuning in. Obviously, you've seen in the title, you could tell by the thumbnail, you could tell if you tune in our social media is Drew and I almost called you Gru. I call you Groot from now on.
That's a new nickname.
But yeah, we've debated a lot, like since we've known each other. And I wouldn't really more say debate because it really hasn't been us trying to say one or the other's better. It's more of like we've kind of like discussed how we're literally polar opposites when it comes to like just how we compete, how we like to fish in general. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons too. I mean, one, even if we fish similarly, I would trust you. But one of the reasons why we're like, we could easily travel with each other for the year and tell each other everything because we're not going to do the other thing that the other's doing. Matter, yeah. So exactly.
That's what I love about you, man.
Yeah. So it's going to be a fun little conversation here for folks that are tuning in because Drew is the backwaters, the no graphs, get into the skinniest of water, drag your kayak around, whatever barrier that's stopping them. And then I'm the guy that's out there with the boats with 360 and forward facing sonar using electronics and fishing as deep as water as I can because for some reason I like that. But so we're going to kind of compare the two today because kayaks can do both. So there's this, like we were saying earlier, there's this notion of kayaks have to be like you were talking about, Drew, like taking it, dumping it into a little pond, backwater pond that a boat can't get into. And that's still the case. And it's still a driving factor, I think, to get a kayak, but that's not where that limit is for kayaks, if that makes sense. I mean, there's been multiple times this past year where I'm out on Lake Erie, miles offshore or Ontario, and boats pull up next to me and they're like, "Are you good? Are you able to get back?" I'm like, "No, I'm here willingly on my own. Yep, I'm good." So it's going to be a fun conversation here. But I think, Drew, if you want to kick us off, I mean, I think for anyone that's in the kayak realm that knows you, knows exactly your style of fishing, but kind of break down like what you like to do. Like, what is Drew Gregory's style of fishing?
Well, it's good to be known that it's good that it's known, that's my style of fishing. I like that. That's good for, a brand. It's good for people. If you look at the bass boat world, right? Everyone knows what John Cox does, or, you know what I mean? Like that, everyone just has their styles,
Yeah. You've become
Greg
a verb.
With a jig or right. Yeah. So I know I just did post something where, the Hobie tournament where Jordan Marshall referenced, I did my best Drew Gregory and he drug his kayak through a field and whatnot. But that's actually why I got the kayak originally. I've fished out of boats growing up and we never had a big bass boat. I had a small little, believe it or not, it was like a 14-foot fiberglass bass boat, a glass stream. I don't think they make anything close to that small anymore in fiberglass, but I had one. And we had a little John boat growing up. So I did the whole boat thing. And to me, it was just about exploring these wild places that just sort of like gripped my heart. And the kayak was just the best tool to do it. I grew up in the Southeast where you got a lot of these rivers in the Piedmont and the mountains that have rapids and rocks where bass boats just can't get, and jet boats still cannot really get. So it was just the best tool. And so that's what the kayak is to me. And so because I fish the tournaments now, I still don't really stray from that. I just, really hope, fingers crossed, and pray that every tournament I go to, I can find something that I also enjoy fishing. And, that's my strength, rivers and backwaters and just sneak holes, places that boats can't get, that it will play and it'll work. And typically I can figure it out and find it, but it's, only because of the so many years experience I've had doing this. I didn't get married till I was 35, or didn't meet my wife till I was 35. I think I was 36 when I got married. So that whole time I was dating the bass. Basically, I was just fishing and fishing and fishing. I don't have a lot of time. Yeah, there we are again with the references. But I don't have a lot of time these days to get out there and like pre-fish and continue to hone my craft as much. But I've done so much in the past, so I just hope and pray that I can find somewhere in each tournament that my style fits, and been fortunate that it's worked out to this point. So.
Yeah, I remember when we were fishing last year for the first Bass Kayak Championship, where we would call each other, during practice, because like we said earlier, we could tell each other exactly what we were doing and know that the other one wasn't gonna, one, copy burn us, but two, that we could kind of like give some, complete polar opposite input of what we're doing, and maybe we could even point something out that the other one didn't think of. And I remember you saying, I think it was like literally the first 2 full days of practice, that you were like, dude, I'm just not finding what I want to see yet. Well, I mean, plus we were going through that drastic change of that rain that came through, and like
Right.
that just mud straight, like less than an inch of viz was coming down that river system. And I think it was the last day, the third day, that it was like the half day of practice, that you finally found something that you had a gleam of hope. And obviously after, when you said that to me going into the meeting, I was like, damn, like Drew's gonna figure out something. If he said he had a glimmer of hope, then that means something's about to go down. And after day one, it proved to fruition. You had like 107. No, what did you? No, you had under 100 inches on the dot, right? You were in second.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was 100, maybe. I think I was a little. Yeah, I think I was in second, maybe. Or no, I can't remember honestly. I think I was up there. I was like second or third or fourth, something like that.
You were in the top 5. You can say that safely.
I think I was actually, second or third, because I was laughing because the second day I did pretty darn good, and usually you'll go up, and I actually went down because the other guys just smashed it so well, and it ended up in fourth. But you're right. I mean, I found something that day, which is actually funny because what I found on the last day of practice didn't really end up working out to being the deal for me, and I had to kind of zig again a little bit. But it's just funny how rains will change things. When you get such heavy rains, it'll change so quickly, you know what I mean? Because the water, when you get the flash floods, it goes up fast, but also comes down fast. So, one day an area may not have been fishable, but then by the time 24 hours hits and it comes down, you could end up being the first person at a spot where it's finally fishable, and it hasn't been for, 3 days of rain, So that's kind of what I found. The water had come down in the area, and it had gotten back to enough clarity to actually get to some fish. And it was just a wild time back there. So,
I have a good feeling now what you actually did. It took me this long to figure out what it is. I think I have a good idea, but we'll leave that for another day. But so talking about the different side of the spectrum. So Drew's, likes the skinny water, backwater, exactly what he just described. And I'm the polar opposite in the fact that I like to rely on my electronics. I like to do usually, when the practice comes, like talking about the same event that we fished, I spent a majority, almost day one, just graphing, where it was, I was, thunder thighs were my engine that day. I don't have a trolling motor. So I was putting in miles, just trying to side image, graph, see what I could find. And that's the kind of style of fishing I like, because usually when you find a school and it lights up, for some reason, that's just for me, like so satisfying, is when they show up and you're like, that's a school of bass. Your first cast in, you get throttled or thumped and you just get that first sign. For some reason, that's just like all that clicking is what I love. But I like being offshore, away from the bank. The less bank in sight possible, the better for me. It just makes me feel more mentally that these fish are a little bit more untapped. Whereas like some of the back, which we'll get into here, that how your realm of things of backwater stuff is almost kind of the same thing. Those fish are untapped, which we'll discuss in a bit. But I mean, for me, it's as far away from shore as I can, and I'm using my electronics pretty heavily. It's a lot of boat positioning, and not that backwater stuff isn't about boat positioning, but for me, it's kind of getting your waypoints right, using like Mega 360, and you're just kind of trying to either use contours, find offshore cover or structure, and it's really coming back to I'm electronic heavy fisherman, and that's who I am. But I like to be offshore, where you like to be in that skinny stuff. So, and here's where the conversation we'll get into is, like people always attribute, like we mentioned a few times, kayaks, skinny water, ponds, stuff like that. there's not too many guys, and I know there's guys that are very good at doing it still, but there's not too many people, at least for me, that I've seen in New York that like to fish offshore. I don't know if it's they're just like comfortable being on the bank in the kayak, or they're still in that stigma. But it's kind of interesting. You don't see too many guys going offshore. There's guys that do, and they get kind of nervous in a slight chop. Maybe I'm just dumb when it comes to like, hey, maybe this is dangerous, but it's something I like to be offshore because I feel like, at least for me in the Northeast, not as many people do it. So it gives me more reach for different fish, if that makes sense.
No, it does, man. And like you said, we're doing the same thing. We're all looking for unpressured, untapped fish that no one else is, really throwing a bait at. They're going to be the easiest to trick, the easiest to fool. And there is something satisfying about what you just said. And I get it. I totally get it. I may have to be doing that at the Bass Championship this year because there really isn't. I don't see a lot of great river and creek opportunities at that event because the Savannah River out of Hartwell dumps right into the next lake. So that's probably not an option. And the creeks are usually running cold that time of year. So probably not the best option either. And there aren't any real big ones. So I may have to be doing, the Bailey thing there at that event, but I get it. It's so satisfying to find that spot. It takes a long time. And what I do takes a while as well. There's no doubt rivers and creeks, especially the smaller the creek, the easier it is to just throw a bait in there and probably catch a fish. They're unpressured. The problem is in a tournament, we're not looking for just any fish, right? We're looking for big ones. And it's, very rare that a small creek competes with a main lake because the bigger the ocean, the bigger the fish. It is true. Now, once you get to medium-sized rivers and like, let's say a large river feeding into a lake, that's different because then there's big fish there as well. But even still, I'm hunting for that needle in a haystack, just like you, Mm-hmm. And there's definitely a lot of similarities there. So I see what you're saying, and the gratification's there on my end. The same way it is for you when you find that school of fish. For me, it's a little bit different because it's never a school. It is a body of water, a section of river or creek or backwater that happens to, they have kind of one-off fish. You know what I mean? It just happens to have good sized fish, but it's like there could be one a mile.
Pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, one a mile maybe that's sizable that matters. And then you got to catch that one. You got to try to catch it. Maybe one every 2 or 3 miles. So it's not a school of 100 fish or 500 fish on Kentucky Lake or Chickamauga, whatever. But it's just a different thing. And that's what's scary about what I do is because if someone else finds those fish and you show up in the morning and whether it's a bridge or canoe and kayak launch or whatever, boat ramp, and it's skinny water, then nobody's winning from that spot. You know what I mean? There's just only so many fish there. There's not a giant school. So it's a nervous thing. That's the most nerve-wracking part of what I do. As probably compared to yours, because if you find yours, even if someone else finds it and pulls up, if there's 50 or 75, you could even fire them up off each other, and that just doesn't really happen. Plus, then the second day of a tournament, I get nervous even if I haven't seen anyone there. If I fished it one day, you're looking at the problem of, you've already pressured that area, and those fish have been caught, and they may or may not bite again. And even if they do, you can't use the same fish twice in a kayak tournament, right? So catch, photo, release, it's not allowed to prevent people from obviously keeping the fish and reusing them on day 2. You got that in your back of your mind as well. So you got to almost have a couple places lined up and zig and zag a little bit and maybe unload the kayak and go somewhere else, on the lake on day 2, or if it's not happening. So I do that quite a bit as well. People don't think you can do that. They don't think you can move in a kayak. You got to just really milk an area and hone in. You can't make runs and stuff like that. I do not buy that one bit. With my strategy, I've moved as many as 5 times in a day, 20, 30 minutes away and driven, just unloaded real quick and driven to other places, popped in. So it is possible. Anyway,
is there a speeding ticket rule in the kayak tournaments?
I think technically there is. Technically, if you were to get a ticket, and I think if you break a law of any sort in the middle of the tournament, I think I don't know, probably could be disqualified. I think. I don't know.
If we put you up to a polygraph on how much if you have gone above the speeding limit when changing spots, would you pass or fail?
Well, I've already spent the money that my checks cash, so I mean, what am I going to say now? Fair, yeah. So I think everybody is back in the day when you had to return to a certain place for kayak fishing tournaments, and it was like mandatory. You had to be back in check-in line by this time. Everybody sped, right?
Wow.
Everybody did. As a matter of fact, and you can get it so fine-tuned as well. Did anyone run a stop sign that morning getting to, you know what I mean, your launch? Then we're all in breach of the rules. So I think that one just kind of, everyone does it to some degree. So I guess that one just kind of slides under the radar. So
I'm guilty of it. It's all right.
yeah,
I'll throw myself under the bus too.
Yeah.
But no, you make a good point too. It's like, I think, you know, the work for my style, that offshore style, comes into the search mode. But really, once you kind of put that initial search in of finding those fish, whether it's one school or 10 schools, whichever it is, you know, once you found those, you can kind of set up either kind of like a milk run, or you can kind of get a pattern. I mean, in kayak fishing, you can only spread yourself out so far. I think in terms of my style, where you're going to only have one launch, right? Whereas like you can spread yourself out, like in your case, where you can almost hit an entire lake, depending on the size of it, in terms of like, I'm going to drop in here, fish for an hour and a half, leave, drop in somewhere else, hour and a half. And I think that's where your workload comes in, where it's, you know, you're loading and unloading, and you're putting in the work of going down one section and then back, loading back up, driving. I mean, you're spending more gas too than I think the majority of folks, you know, that are maybe going to max, you know, 2 launches. So I think it's, in my mind, I think it's way more work for your style of fishing, because it's more of that loading and unloading. And I think and I give you mad respect for this too, because I could never do it with my mental state and how I competitively fish, is the time management it takes to do that. I would freak out. I'd be so nervous because I want as much time as possible. But like the fact that you can be able to time management, almost kind of like schedule out your day. And that's kind of where I'm curious with too, is like, do you plan you said that you've hit like at 5 spots at most. Is that because maybe one doesn't, you know, the 1, 2, 3 doesn't pan out the way you want, or it's because you're just going to run and hit those 5 different ones in hopes that you're just kind of running into as many fish possible?
No, I mean, what you said first is right. I mean, stop one's not panning out like I thought. So, and I'll give you an example. The one time I did hit 5, well, there was a couple times. One was Lake Dardanelle this past year, and the other one was up on the upper Mississippi in La Crosse. But Dardanelle, I'd pre-fished, and in 5 minutes, it's a spot I'd fished the year prior when I won at Lake Dardanelle on the Hobie Bass Open Series. I won there. And I'd fished this area, and I didn't fish it during the tournament, but I'd pre-fished it. So I knew there was some potential there. And this is a different time of the year. It's in April. I went there, and in the first 5 minutes of pre-fishing this area, I caught like a 19 and a half, 20. It was like a 5-pounder. And I caught the fish in 5 minutes, and I left. So that's my pre-fishing style. I'm going to catch one. Once I catch one solid fish, plus I already had a little history there, I thought, they're here. I think maybe I caught 2 that day, 16 and like whatever. That good one, that was it. And I was like, all right, I'm out. I spent 15 minutes there. Well, in the tournament, for whatever reason, you know, sometimes fish will fool you. You know, they'll lie to you. Every once in a while they do. And that was one of those situations where that fish just happened to be there. I don't know what it was, but I fished that area for a solid, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours. Can't remember. It was a while, maybe 2.5 and nothing. So I had to have, and during my pre-fishing, that's the way I roll. I kind of find multiple places to put in where they have potential, where I've caught fish. I always want to give myself an out. And I'll use this as an example. My brother used to drive a big rig, right? Like a semi. And what he did, he always told me, he said, when they train to drive the big rigs, you always have to be thinking, and just, this is the same with a regular vehicle too, but for semi especially, they're always thinking, where's your out right now if your tire blows? Where can you pull off? Where can you go? You don't want to be stuck in the middle lane, right? You want to be on one, obviously the right lane really for trucks, but you always need to have an out. And I always want to give myself an out. If it doesn't work out, I want to have a plan B, C, and D, because I never really know what my spots have. Because here's kind of the difference a little bit in the offshore versus skinny water. I know I don't have a giant population of fish, so I can't wear on them. I know you don't wear on them either. You know, you probably catch 3, 4, or 5 to find out the sizes in that school, but I can't even catch that many per se. I just need to maybe 2 or 3, maybe. That's even risky, but really I just need to catch as many until I get a good size one. Then I at least know that spot has some size. But anyway, that's kind of where, how I do it. And then I just, A, B, C, and D and move. But on tournament days, when I really know and I expand a little bit further on the area, that's when I actually really know what I have and which spot. And I always go to the spot I feel has the most potential first. And then maybe I'm there all day long and I never move because I expand on it and it's unreal. But then there's a time where spot B or spot C turned out to be the better one. And I just wasn't sure because I couldn't pre-fish and catch all my fish pre-fishing, right? So then on the second day of the tournament, now I really know, right? I've fished them all hard, on first day. Now I know which one really has the size and has the numbers. And then I go back and I just kind of focus on that one. And hopefully I never have to move on to B or C or D. So it happened both La Crosse and Dardanelle. I had to move a lot. And at Wisconsin, I ended up with 11th place and scratched out a check. But Dardanelle, 5 places I just could not find them, which is just how it goes, man. It's fishing. But
yeah. That was going to be one of my bigger curiosity questions here was, when you're practicing is like, how do you know? I mean, obviously, if you catch 1 or 2 decent fish off the bat, that's a clear cut sign, get out because it's probably going to be a high percentage. But when you say you launch into somewhere and you catch, a 13-incher, a 14, another 13, like, do you have like a stopping point where you're like, maybe if I fish through it enough, there might be big ones, or will you go until you find a significant fish? If let's put it on the grounds of, it's going to take a 90+ inch bag to win. Will you fish through an area until you figure out what the big ones are doing, or maybe change baits to try to get a bigger bite? Or will you just kind of, I shouldn't say not fish through them, but like, will you leave and hope that there's big ones there?
I will leave at a point. I mean, honestly, it's probably the same thing you do when you think about it. Probably translate the exact same way. You hit a school of fish, and you just start to realize that it's just there's not any size there. It's going to take you a long time to get to a 17. Rivers, creeks, and backwaters are eerily similar, man. They are. Birds of a feather flock together. It's true. I mean, and of course you have to understand. You guys have to remember, if you're listening to this, like how many years experience on rivers and creeks I have. So I also know to look for other signs. It's not just, I'm catching 13s and 14s. It's like, no, what did one area have where I caught big ones in that in that lake, other creeks or rivers or backwaters? What did that have? Was it grass? Was it rock? Was there something that's now it's a combination of things? It's missing the key environmental factor. Plus I'm getting just 13s and 14s, plus maybe the water clarity, the current isn't it's too swift or it's too calm. It's not like a moderate or whatever I'm looking for. Sometimes you're looking for swifter, sometimes moderate, but and sometimes even calmer, but it just depends. So you put it all together just like a puzzle. But there's definitely a point where you're just like, I got to go. I can't just keep, I've caught 5 or 6 small ones. And if it's clear water and you're just not seeing anything bigger on top of that too, and you can stand up and see them, it's like, all the signs are pointing to I need to move. And my goal is always to find as many spots the same way I'm sure your goal is. You want as many schools or hit as many high percentage areas, whether it's brush piles you've marked or rock points or whatever, you just want as many of those as possible. And then you can just really go all out in the tournament and really figure out, all right, here's what I've got.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too, is like, with your style at the backwaters, shallow stuff, is if you don't have that water clarity where you can visually see kind of what's there, for like to an extent, I mean, you got to catch one in order to kind of see what's going on. But if you get good enough with your electronics in that offshore deal, you can actually get a good idea. One of what the species is. 2, you can kind of get an idea of the size that's there. If it's a mixed school, if it's just a lot of big ones, or if obviously it's just a bunch of small bass. I mean, you can kind of get an idea. I'm not saying it's clear cut because it's not, but you can kind of get an idea when you find a school that's maybe a bunch of 2-pounders. So like 13 to 15 inches, but you can see obviously, whether it's down imaging or on your side, you can tell when there's a bigger one in there. So I mean, I would say it's pretty similar in terms of, when I know that tournament is going to take a decent amount of length to win. If I catch a 13 and a 14, what I do initially, even if it's my first cast in a school, or I know that there's fish on maybe it's like an offshore piece of like, maybe it's a boulder, or, maybe it's just a ledge. That first and second bite, I think, is always crucial to see what that fish does with that bite. Does that fish bite initially and run away? Because if he does, that means it's competing. And that usually means if it eats quick too, that means there's a lot more fish there than you probably realize. If the second bite is similar, then you got yourself a good school that'll fire. But if they're both small, I've really in not that I'm saying it's a proven theory here, but one that I've been experimenting a lot with is like when I find that there's a concentration of fish, at least for tournament practice, I will take like a bigger swim bait. Like I have some mag drafts that are just completely shredded that I've just taken, and they're just big screw locks in them. And I'll just use those to see if those get thumped. And you can tell between like a 2-pounder and like a decent fish when they eat that.
Oh yeah.
I will throw that back in there if I think there's any bigger ones in there that have the capability of eating it. And like for I think in shallow water too, you could use usually. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. You could easily throw like a glide bait to make those bigger fish show themselves. But that's like kind of like the offshore deeper way of me getting fish to show themselves. Like
that's true.
Big baits to get them to commit without actually catching them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's smart, man. Even though it's a big school, or I mean, it doesn't have to be a big school. I mean, school could be 5 fish too. You still don't want to catch. I mean, even if it's 100 fish, you want to like not catch them if you don't have to or don't need to. You can find out what size they are. These days people live scope and they just look and they don't even like cast at them pre-fishing. So you're doing that as smart. It's the same thing I do in pre-fishing. I pull, and if it's shallow, which a lot of times the water I'm fishing is shallow, I'm notorious for pulling the bait away. Just I see what it is, and I don't want to catch it. I mean, I've got GoPro footage of me being upset, like on the Susquehanna River. I'm like, dang it, no. And like I'm fighting this giant smallmouth that's jumping, and it just looks silly with me being upset. And if I ever posted it, everyone would be like, that's so weird. Why is he so upset? He's got a giant smallmouth on. I tried to pull the bait away and I missed. I couldn't do it. It got it too quick. The tournament was the next day, and there was 2 of them chasing it. And I'm like, oh man. So I tried to definitely pull it away. And on the video I even just posted on Instagram like today or whenever that was, I'm just trying to just horse them in real quick. I don't care if they get off in pre-fishing. I want to just try. I hope they get off actually. Sometimes I'm not a person who posts a lot of big fish pre-fishing. Other kayak anglers do. And that's a lot of times because I have pulled the bait away or whatever. But if I get them in, hey, of course I'm going to get a good photo. But anyway, our styles are so similar. They're so far apart. They're so different. And it's so interesting to have this conversation because something I see that mirrors the bass boat world, you don't really see a lot of anglers who are really good at both styles. You know what I mean? You just don't. It's because it's even hard as many days as they have on the water, full-time bass fishermen. It's so stinking hard to be good at both. You would almost do better and cash more checks and win more tournaments focusing and putting all your eggs hardcore in one basket or the other. But of course there are tournaments where you can't help it. You're going to go up north. You're going to have your St. Lawrence and your Eries and places like that. But even still, let's just say you were a shallow water backwater guy. You can get largemouth in those places and still cash checks. You know what I'm saying? So, but you might, if let's say you try to be super versatile and you're at that highest level, it can bite you. You can have a lot of 30 and 40 place finishes, which are great out of 100 anglers if you're in a field like the Elite Series. But wouldn't you rather have a 50 or 60th place finish on a couple of tournaments and then some top 10s or a win? Of course. So that's where I think it's interesting. I've stuck to my guns. I do have a live scope. I am putting it on. I'm going to use it in certain situations. I'm not becoming, like a Bailey or Robert Weicker or Adam Reiser, people that are known in the kayak world for the electronics. And that's what they do. I'm never going to have enough time to learn that to the same level that you have. And I think it's wise for you probably to never switch gears either. Not that you want to, that's just in your DNA, but there will be only a few times, maybe 1 or 2 times where it may make sense to kind of zig the other way, my direction, but not very often. And you're going to always finish better off doing what you're doing and just getting better at it. The time you would waste spending trying to get, remotely understanding what I do, think about how much better you could be spending getting even better with electronics to dominate on those events where that's going to work. So that's my philosophy and my theory, and why I just stick to my guns. I got a kayak for the simplification, the ease of, to get in the places boats can't go, to be able to find, I find water and look for water where I can catch them on a spinnerbait, chatterbait, buzzbait, swimbait, something moving like that. And I pretty much look at the map and I tell the lake, I'm like, I'm going to find where those baits will work. I don't care what everyone else is doing. They just hop in a lake and let's see what the bite is. Let's see what's happening here, how I'm going to catch them. I'm determined. And that, it sounds stubborn, but I'm telling you, if you focus so hard on that one, something, your strength, that actually can work. It does work. It may limit you to some tournaments and some, like this Lake Russell, right? It's going to limit my amount of water to fish to like 5% of the whole lake. Whereas other places that are, like whatever, like I can't, like Dardanelle or La Crosse or whatever, Susquehanna River, that's like 99% my all water that I understand, right? So you get my point. I think it's just interesting. Even on the highest level of the bass boat world, you just don't see a lot of people who, everyone kind of is known for something. I think that's smart from a branding perspective to also just be known. This is what he does. Chris Zaldain throws the big swim baits. He goes for broke. He knows that well. If that bites on, he's got a chance, a lot of these Japanese guys, it's like 4-pound tests, 3-pound tests, 5, 6, they're so good. Taku Ito, all those guys, man, that's just, but it's great for their brand and they are so good at it. They can find a spot on that lake that it will work and compete. And that's what I think is crazy too. The last thing I mentioned, I'll let you get back in here, is the best anglers at every style, whether it's the banks, the backwaters, creeks, rivers like I do, or offshore. I honestly believe in every single body of water, you can catch the winning fish in every one of those scenarios. Now it's dependent on those 3 different anglers, each how good they are at crafting their skill in those conditions on those 2 days or 3 or 4 days. And that's the beauty of our sport. It can be won anywhere. I mean, anywhere, it really can. So it's a lot of fun to see how it all plays out.
Oh yeah. It's a completely different ball game. Like, especially from an offshore perspective. I mean, I think there, with that and how much you have to search for it, I mean, there is the chance that it's a lot of opportunity costs in terms of you're missing out on a lot of other stuff where you could be really moving and grooving, trying to figure out some shallow bite and really covering a lot of ground. Whereas you can cover just as much ground, if not more, while you're graphing, but it's a lot of dead space where it's just useless stuff that you're not acquiring. But now and then you do acquire those hidden gems. Maybe they're not hidden, but like gems that'll make you do pretty well in a tournament, and things that people aren't really willing to put that work in. And it's kind of almost like a game of gambling in itself, to be honest with you.
It is
just as much as it is for you to go and drive an hour and a half to the north end of the lake where no one else is really willing to go, and go completely to the very back of a creek that you have no idea if it's going to pan out or not. I think that's just as much of a gamble. And I mean, I guess we say that's just fishing, really. But I mean, I think one thing really fast, quick, that reminded me just kind of like my beginnings of fishing, Drew, is my first kayak ever was a Walmart, like just a simple, I can't even remember what the heck they're called, like the Sun Dolphins or whatever. But growing up in middle school, like I would go down the road and go fish we had these little backwater creeks with smallmouth in them. And I would just take one rod, a spinnerbait. And that was like kind of like a really hidden passion of mine, because I couldn't like go to the lake. My dad didn't have a boat or anything like that. And that's what I got that Sun Dolphin for. And then thought, hey, I should get the bigger kayak. I wanted one at least. My dad ended up getting me that Field and Stream Shadowcaster, that huge barge.
Oh, yeah.
That was not a backwater kayak. The thing was so dang heavy. But that's how I actually started, was like these backwater smallies. So when I get times to like leave the graphs at home, maybe go to a pond and bring only a frog and a jig, or go in these little backwater tile stuff. Like, dude, I tell you, my event that I am most excited for this year is that Wolf and Fox River in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
Because well, I mean, for one, we don't have a fishery like that here in New York, and I am dying to do that. So I will say my passion and my strength lie offshore. But I mean, anyone that doesn't enjoy getting backwaters, no graphs, picking up a chatterbait or a spinnerbait and going to town. I mean, they just don't like fishing, to be honest.
No, seriously. And speaking of that, when I see people make comments and say things like, or not give myself or anyone who does well in a tournament in a creek with no graphs or whatever, just 2-3 rods. When I see people or hear people almost discredit that, dude, that drives me crazy, because it's like they feel like we're so locked in and conditioned to the big bass world, the electronics and all that if you find them that way, there's like mad respect, and it's easy to find them the other way, which is not true. It's easy to catch fish in a creek, no doubt about it. It is hard to catch winning fish in a creek, and that, or river, smaller river. That's where the skill really comes in. So it bugs me when I do. I've seen it online before. I have seen people say that, where it's almost like discrediting that. To me, like, that is, like you said, there's so much purity in that and joy and fun in that. But I also see the joy and the art in doing what you do with the just graphing nonstop, and you commit to it. That's what I love about it. Like, I'm going to graph all day. I'm going to get up at 2 a.m. and just start graphing. I get it, man. Because with your style, if you don't do that, you will never be successful. You've got to commit to graphing. I mean, like a whole day or more, because you know what you're looking for on the graph. Then you can go back and throw the second, third day of pre-fishing. You can really figure out all the points you've marked. And I agree with what you're saying. The kayak world's different than the bass boat world. I think bass boat world fishes offshore more than the kayak world, because the kayak world, either people aren't comfortable being offshore, or they don't understand how to use the technology. Some people, just like bass boat world, not everyone understands really how to graph properly. They may not have a 360 like you, and some of the tools, the lives that really change the game. So I think it's cool and it's smart that you're doing that, especially with the advance in technology, and then you commit to it on top of it. I mean, it's great. So that's why your success is what it is as well. So
yeah, and I think that the two styles of fishing also apply to fishing within your means. Now, I think your style of fishing is much more accessible for anyone really even just getting into the sport, because it's minimal gear. But I mean, I think I don't want to say it's harder to fish offshore. It's just unfortunate you need better equipment, if that makes any sense, which kind
yeah.
of, people can argue kind of gets away from the whole, kayak fishing, where it started, what it's actually about. And I won't argue that. I mean, I just think that you shouldn't. Well, yeah, I don't think you should put a limit on kayak fishing, because
No.
I think it's always going to be, Drew, this style of fishing you have is always going to be what people think of kayak fishing about, and I think that's perfectly true. But I don't think people should place a limit on it, like me getting comments
Right.
for being offshore in a kayak and boats driving around saying I shouldn't be out there. I don't think that's right at all.
No.
And that's a whole nother tangent. We can go on that for
Well, along
years.
the same lines, I don't think it's right that we have any boundaries in our watersheds, when that's why we got the kayak, is to be able to go
Exactly.
anywhere. If you can float, paddle your way down a river or creek into that main lake, then that is part of that ecosystem. You know what I mean? That's dam to
Yeah.
dam. So that, to me, is the other thing, that we could talk about. I mean, you could almost argue it's makes more sense to cut off offshore fishing to a certain degree in big bodies of water, where you could say it's for most people it's not safe to be offshore, and since boat tournaments cover that water, you could do something like Grand Lake. You could almost argue more that side. I don't think either one should be off limits for kayaks. We should embrace the versatility of it. That's what makes it different than the boating world. We can literally go anywhere and everywhere, and we don't want to be on top of them anyway. So if we continue to keep it all open, it allows the anglers now to figure out the puzzle. Now we get to figure it all out. And one day some kid's going to come along. He really is going to be amazing at electronics, and he's going to be amazing at skinny and backwaters, and he's going to have the experience and knowledge to understand when to do which, when to zig, when to do zag. Because certainly, even though it could be won either way in each tournament, there's going to be tournaments where it would be wiser to pick one or the other. You know what I mean? To do, your odds will be greater. You know what I mean? It's going to win in one, way or the other. So one day some kid's going to come along and he's going to be just amazing in all of it. But it's who knows? There's someone probably right now that we're just not thinking about, but it's just hard.
I mean, there's obviously bodies of water that just, you're not going to have that offshore, but like, I mean, I think in certain cases, like, I guess it really just boils down to what body of water it is. Like the Susquehanna River, like you're not going to be doing any sort of, I mean,
Right.
to an extent maybe, but you're not really going to be using electronics. It's more of who can read the current the best and find that better caliber of fish, plain and simple. And it's those people that can do well on a fishery like that, like a Cody Milton. That I believe didn't he win that event?
Yeah,
And
he
then
did not win. He got like second, I think, one year to Jody Queen. And then he does really well offshore. So he's an Arkansas guy. He's a great example of someone that's really good at both, really good at both. So, I mean, it's definitely doable. And he's a good example of someone who's like a PKA, a pro kayak angler. He's got a lot of time. He's can really spend enough time to hone each one. The question is, if he spent, well, the kayak world is different because you will have tournaments like the Wolf and Fox or Susquehanna where you're right. There is no offshore anything. It's unless it was held in January. There's when they winter in deep holes, the smallies, it's not going to play. But no, you're right. It's amazing to see anglers that can do both really well because it's not easy and it takes a lot of time to learn and understand what makes each situation where you can catch those winning fish. It's not easy. So
yeah, and kind of wrapping up the whole the point on fishing offshore. I firmly believe that fishing offshore, like actually getting those fish to bite, is relatively easy. I think because the biggest factors to me are one, conditions, two, your boat positioning, and then obviously application. Like how are you presenting that bait? But beyond that, it's really just the biggest factor is, are you willing to put in the time? And it's not really like, I mean, obviously I think graphing in a kayak is much harder than graphing in a boat, obviously. But like, it's just more, are you willing to put in that time and the energy to find them? I mean, that's the hardest part. I mean, once you find those offshore fish and you know that they're willing to play, I mean, it's fairly easy if you know how to position your boat right to figure those fish out. But what I'm really curious about is, like, obviously in current situations, those backwaters, they're generally easy to read if you understand current, right? And how those fish will set up, what that place might look like, what applications that they're aware. But for me, I'm really curious on your thought process of a lake that doesn't have just general current. And we'll take like a Possum Kingdom, throw that out the window because that was a completely random act of Mother Nature. But like a lake that is just generally just stable and has those rivers, creeks that you can access, how do you go about like deciding which ones are more high percentage than the other? Is it just length? Like what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a loaded question because it depends on the location. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you've got some lakes in the country that are in the plains that really just have kind of sandy, muddy creeks that really aren't that great. You know what I mean? And it also depends on the species of fish that are living there. But I mean, it comes down to a few things. I mean, you want to have a clean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's clear, but just a clean, healthy system. And generally, the further you go up, so I'm kind of getting into some secrets here, but the further you go up into the watershed, even if it's out of bounds for the tournament, which again, little secret here, I fish out of bounds water a lot, but all I'm trying to do is learn about that creek or river and the health of it. You know what I mean? Are you seeing bait? Are you seeing life? Are you seeing, the things that I just kind of look for with the right, aquatic vegetation, everything that I know to look for, the right clarity, whatever. If you're seeing that, then downstream in that whole creek arm or river arm of the lake is probably good because it's got fertile water dumping into it. So now you can kind of expand on that a little bit, and you didn't have to burn up any of your fish in the tournament either. Now, is it a risk? You really have to have some insane experience to really read all that and then go cold turkey into that float or whatever you're doing, right, in the tournament, because it's just a huge risk. But I will pre-fish usually, for a little bit inbounds water too. But if I just want to stop at a bridge or stop somewhere and find the health of the fishery, I can do it and read it quickly to move on to another one and to find as many spots. But basically, you're looking for depth. I mean, bigger fish, they do need depth, right? At some point, they need some depth nearby. It doesn't mean, it could be summertime and they could be in a foot of water, of course. But if there isn't a good deep wintering hole, in that mile of river creek, then there's probably, not going to be that as many fish there, right? Because they still need depth. You get rare situations where bigger fish from the lake move up in the fall, late summer, fall, chasing shad. That you got to know things like that happen. So generally, this one creek could be horrible all the times of the year, but then one random month of the year, month or two, when the shad are moving up there, you could have 20 inchers up there. So you got to understand stuff like that as well. It's just over time, you got to learn different things. You got the like shoals and pools and runs and creeks and rivers, right? Generally. And your rapids, your shoals, if you will, your rapids in certain parts of the country, the Ozarks or the plains, whatever, they're going to look different. They could be where it narrows down and just gets swift, but it kind of dumps into a pool, right? I'm not saying it's a true rapid like the Appalachians and the Piedmont in the Southeast, right, although it could be. But generally, you have those rapids dump into pools, and pools could either, start another rapid, which is all essentially just a miniature dam. A rapid is just when the rocks pile up and when it narrows up like that, it's making a little mini dam. So that's depth. So things like that are good. Runs, when it gets narrow, are just straightaways, which are called runs, and they're just straightaways. They're shallower and they're swifter, generally are not as productive. So you can look on a map and figure out things like that. The outside bends are generally deeper because the river or creek has hit hard rock and it turned the river creek. That's what made the river bend, right? It hit rock or a hard clay if it's in certain parts of the country. So you've got more depth there. Again, more depth equals potential for bigger fish. They need a bigger, deeper water to hide in, right? So lots of little things like that, man. And you can learn a lot of that, Bailey, by looking at the map and looking at the shape of the river and the water clarity of the rivers and creeks. It's a little bit longer than we have now to get completely into, but to answer your question, and short as I could, it's kind of all that wrapped up into one, and it just takes experience to kind of figure out.
How much trekking, like through backwoods to find the end of a creek, have you done? Like not even taking the kayak, but just like hiking through, whether it's public or private. we won't have you disclose. Like, do you go through to like find the backwaters just so you can do like quick study without actually having to unload anything?
Yeah, more than people probably realize. And I've got stories I could tell about that, because Bailey, that's one of the things, like when you're graphing for a whole day with your style, my graphing is driving around and looking at every, creek and river and backwater that I can find public access to quickly so I can assess it. And then I can come back the second.
You're graphing on the road.
I'm graphing on the road. And a lot of times it's all about time management, saving time. I think some people think, oh, I want to go get to the spot, but it's going to be a 3-mile paddle or motor and pre-fishing or whatever. If I can find any other way to get there, that'll save me an hour or two from motoring, which is one way, it's going to be 2 or 4 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Round trip, that kills your entire day of pre-fishing. And the more spots I can see with the experience, coupled with the experience I've got, on fisheries all across the country. Because I've fished all over, thanks to my Hooked on Wild Water show I did, and just traveling a lot in the industry, I can couple that experience with, I've seen that before. I've seen this before. So the more I can see, the more confident I feel like I can break it down. So I do a lot of hiking. And the one story I'll tell is just, I scaled a cliff, man. I probably shouldn't even mention or whatever. I don't want my wife to know some of the stuff I've done probably, but she'd probably kill me. But no, I scaled like a cliff. She probably can hear me upstairs anyway, talking, but whatever. I think it was
the last words of Drew Gregory.
On Champlain. Yeah, exactly. I'm safe about it and I know what I'm doing, but for sure doing it alone is always not as safe as doing it with somebody else. And I was just scaling a cliff to get to this one fishery in Champlain, and it was pretty dangerous. And if I would have fallen, I mean, yeah, I would have gone in the water. I would have fallen in the water, I guess, and it was deep there, but it would have not been fun. And whatever, probably would have been okay. But anyway, it took me a while to hike down this waterfall, basically all this whole area to get to a spot, and it was could be conceived as dangerous if you didn't know what you're doing. I guess perceived as dangerous. But you're onto me.
Yeah, we all have blackmail on Drew Gregory now.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. I mean, keep your eyes on the bank, on the water, but make sure you're checking those cliffs because a wild Drew Gregory is probably scaling down the damn thing.
Just dropping a chatterbait up the top. I'll do that from bridges all the time. Just drop a chatterbait off or some bait, and then you can see, because you're up high, you can see if anything's coming, and you can see the size of it, and you pull it away, and you're like, "Yep, okay," and then you hop back in your car, go to the next one.
We are unleashing the Drew Gregory juice today.
But dude, tell me it's not much different than what you do. In a lot of ways, it's so similar. You're covering water, you're dropping pins, waypoints, you're marking your spots, so you can come back and really dive deeper and understand what's there with actually fishing on the second or third day of practice. And I'm doing the same thing, just covering as much as I can to uncover what's really there. So then it comes down to execution, which whole other story. It's hooking the fish is the hardest part, and then landing them is still even harder sometimes. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, dude, I think to wrap up this conversation, I'm actually kind of curious to see how this compares. I mean, I think it's going to compare pretty drastically just because of the fishermen we are, but I'm curious of, you get 3 search baits, just like for finding fish and just knowing they're there, figure out size. 3 search baits. I mean, I'm sure I could probably name them off for you, and you could probably do likewise. Yeah. But I'm just curious. 3 search baits. What are you bringing?
Yeah, it's going to be a chatterbait and a buzzbait or whopper plopper. The buzzbait and whopper plopper will be interchangeable depending on whether there's grass in the fishery or if it's clean, like open water. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then probably like a spinnerbait. I just like those. I typically throw a spinnerbait when there's a little bit more current and rapids, because it gets down underneath there and the blades turn. The chatterbait not quite as effective, and but anyway, that's kind of the difference. Another similar, people throw spinnerbaits and chatterbaits. They're kind of similar, right? And people don't really sometimes understand why you do one or the other. To me, it also boils down to the chatterbait skips, and I can get it skipping really good, and the spinnerbait doesn't. But those would be my 3 for sure, to just find the fish, and then hopefully I'm still using those on tournament day too. Maybe mixing in a swim bait there, or every once in a while a jig or something with a crawl on the back or something like that, and some blowdowns. But
yeah,
I try not to deviate too much.
No. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and I feel like that's not only just search baits, but that's like you mentioned, those are stuff you're pretty much going to use on tournament day if they're going to eat it.
Yeah. Is yours like crankbait? What about your 3? You gonna deep diving crank or Carolina rig, or what do you throw down there to find them in 25 foot?
I do like to throw a crankbait, but believe it or not, it's really not my favorite search bait just to get that initial bite. I think universally, like just all around the country, like if I just need one search bait to kind of just know that they're bass, I like to throw like a finesse, just a single swimmer, like a 3.5 or a 4-inch, just to think that they're bass. Because I mean, that's my confidence bait. Mm-hmm. That I'm like a little owner football head. I like a football head for a swim bait head more than
really?
That's at least for me, especially it's probably the northerner in me talking for smallmouth with our rock piles and shoals and stuff like that, just because it comes through better. But a single swimmer is like one of my favorite search baits, just to tell if they're bass.
And you fish it on the bottom through the rocks?
It depends how those fish are positioning, but yeah, you can obviously, if I'm going to go on bottom, I'm going to use that football head, but I will just use a single swim bait head, either a ball head or an actual, like, right. I can't really say the name of it, but just if I'm going to fish it more mid-column, if I'm going to actually have a countdown, which is obviously going to change once I get Mega Live, you can actually see how those fish real time are going to be positioning up. But swim bait, and the next one is actually one that I think you'll really enjoy here, Drew. I like to throw a 1 ounce jackhammer.
Yeah.
For those deep fish.
Yep.
And that's kind of like a little bit of juice that I don't see many people doing. Miles Berghoff talked about it a
Dude, I was
while ago.
gonna say him. I was gonna.
Chickamauga, yeah,
He
he's a
does it
big
on.
fan of that thing,
He
and he
loves
said it,
it.
and I was like, I hope nobody in the north like hears about that, like,
He told me
because
that on the
I've
phone.
never seen anyone else do it up here. Like, they're like, what chatterbaits you throwing? And they're like, an ounce, and they're like, what? I'm like, I probably should stop saying that.
Yeah, he told me that one time on the phone. We were talking, and because he's on the Z-Man team with me, and we'll chat every once in a while. Super great guy, and one of the best in the industry. And he was telling me about some schools of fish on Chick, the same thing, and I was just like, how many fish are out there, man? You think? And he's like, oh, there's schools of thousands of bass, and I was like, no
Yeah.
way. And I was like, what do you catch them on? He said, yeah, like an ounce, 3/4, and up to an ounce jackhammer, and of course they make it up to I think 1.25. But it just blew me away. But it makes sense. I mean, you're getting a bait that they don't see very often down deep like that. So that's some more juice here late in the podcast for those who have been, paying attention here, following along.
If folks are sticking around here, they're getting some good juice headed their way. But dude, the last one for me is one that I've always had a lot of confidence in general. And Buddy Gross really confirmed this theory. I say theory, but it's more just kind of been like a feeling that I had. But Buddy Gross has this same theory that, like, and this is why a crankbait, like burning a crankbait, is not like my favorite search bait, because I feel like a crankbait, if you got a school that you haven't really tapped yet, if you burn that through them, you're more likely to spook a bunch of them than you are to actually get them fired up. Now, that's not always the case, right? But those fish, when they're not being touched, no one's getting them fired up yet. Buddy Gross, and I have a clip of it on this channel. We have a whole episode. He talked about using a football jig to get those first few bites because it's on the bottom, it's subtle. The fish that are more likely to eat tend to be closer to the bottom of the water column.
Yeah.
So if you get those fish fired up with that football jig, then you can come in with a big hair jig or crankbait and get those fish that maybe were a little bit suspended up to come back down. Like, what's just all this commotion about?
Sure.
And get more of those fish fired up. And the crankbait's more of a closer than anything else.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, man. No, Buddy Gross is one of the best, obviously, at that. And he's the kind of angler that scares me, or like someone like I don't know, like, remember when Brett Height one time was it him? He had found some fish, like a giant schoolfish offshore. I think it was on the Harris chain or something, when they were there and just smashed them with the jackhammer. People that just find these fish offshore, and Buddy Gross is probably one of the best at it. Brian Thrift. People like that are who you're emulating, and that's what scares me. So when anglers like you, they're electronics focused, when we're on a lake and I know that potential is there offshore, I'm always freaking out thinking about, some electronics guy has found a school of these giants out there. How am I going to, and they're going to sit there all day long in one spot, and with a trolling motor with spot lock, potentially not even have to do anything, but just sit there and cast. And I'm going to be driving around, paddling 15 miles a day, just trying to find the one good fish in a mile and a half or 2 miles that could compete with them sitting there. So it's just funny how so different these styles are. And I'm telling you, when this becomes a TV product one day, that's going to be the beauty of our sport, is being able to see one guy doing it so different than the other guy. And then both of them have a chance to win the thing. So it's pretty cool. But I like that tip from Buddy Gross. That's a good one. And I will warn you guys this, one of the last things I'll say before we move on, and wrap this up. And maybe one other topic we're going to hit or whatever, but I want to warn people about when I talk about my style, it sounds so easy, right? We talk about this. We make it look easy. It sounds easy. It's kind of like a professional golfer. They make it look so easy. So when I watch golf, all of a sudden I get fired up to go to the course. I'm like, that looks so easy, man. Their swing is so simple, so easy. I can do that. I go out there and it's like not, I'm okay golfer, but it's not even close. But it looks so easy. In a pro, like a Thrift or Wheeler, whoever you want to say, Evers or Ott, whatever, they make it look so easy. So I'm sitting here talking to you guys about how I find fish in these backwaters and creeks, and it just seems so easy. I want to warn you that just because fish are in a backwater where boats can't get, they're unpressured, it's still not easy to catch them.
No.
It's not easy to find the right size. It's not easy to produce it 2 days in a row. And there's no guarantee that the rain and the weather doesn't really mess you up, where it may not mess up the offshore guys as much. And I get more fingers here, and the other people aren't going to show up, right, and be on your spot. Yeah. And in that case, you're donezo. You better have a plan B, C, and D. It's what makes what I do nerve-wracking. So there are pros and cons, and I'm making it sound great, but I wouldn't trade it for anything else. And if somebody else finds it, then good on them, and we can discuss how to like kind of figure it out and split it up, or one person just bails and goes somewhere else. And we've done that before. I Lake Seminole, I think Jason Broach and who was it? A few other people were at the same little creek that I was going to fish. It was coming in to the lake, and I knew they'd pre-fished. I saw them go in there, so I talked to them at the pre-tournament meeting, and they, he was like, I'm going there, and I'm like, okay, well, tell you what, there's a point where we had like kind of a deal. I don't know if anyone ever held up to their end of the bargain, because I never actually went in there. I didn't need it. But the deal was like, hey, look, my little teeny 10-foot kayak can go a little further in the back of all that than you guys can. If you guys, I'll bail and won't even go there. I won't, because we all could get there within the 30-minute time allotted at the beginning of the day to paddle or pedal there to start fishing. So I did not want to be sitting there with 3 people just like trying to figure out, butt elbows and figure out what we're going to do, right? And then no one's going to win. So I literally said, I'll concede that whole creek. Give me that back a little bit just in case at the very end of the day, if I need to come in there at the very end, I can go all the way back there and know it's kind of untouched. And, I think they were kind of like, yeah, sure, or whatever, who knows if they did it or not, but it was a compromise we made. And I ended up going and fishing blind, just a whole new section of water that looked good that I never had time to pre-fish. Because that's the other thing. You can't cover all of these Drew Gregory kind of river bass and places pre-fish. You can't cover them all. So I still had a few bullets left that I hadn't fired in some spots that I thought. So I went blindly and found just some giants in a backwater and never even needed the other spot. So it's a scary proposition. You got to figure out ways, and you got to be able to communicate with your fellow anglers if you do run into them, because that can certainly mess your odds up. So, and I'm always looking for winning fish. I'm not trying to, I'm trying to win every tournament, and it's just not going to happen on a small creek if multiple people are there. So
yeah, that's a really good point, and one that I completely forgot to bring up is just like, how good are these areas in terms of consistency? And with tournaments like offshore areas, you more likely have people might, at least on the boater side, you'll have more than likely that somebody, one, will find that spot. 2, you might have, maybe some company, as we say, but those offshore deals are a little bit easier to upkeep for more than one person fishing it. Whereas some of that backwater stuff, if it's more than 1 or 2 people, it's just not even worth staying there in general, because you might get 1 or 2 fish, but then everyone else is kind of struggling to get the rest of their limit. That's where, like you said, communication comes into play. But also, you mentioned over 2 days. You really have to manage your fish well. Obviously this goes, per fishery, because the same can be applied for the fish that are offshore, maybe some deeper fish, what have you. But more often than not, like in that backwater stuff, you can't beat the crap out of them on that first day, unless you really have current flowing in and things are changing and more fish are coming in like throughout that day. If more fish are coming in, obviously you'll be fine. But that being said, that can apply to an offshore fishery where you have like you're saying, Drew, where Miles says there's 1,000 fish in there. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
Where you got to be a little bit more strategic, and I give you more props for that backwater stuff, because there's a lot of people that, will catch 100 inches and know that they're on track to win, and they won't stop. They'll catch 105, but they're only going to catch 90 the next day. And the guy that caught 98 and 96 is going to win. So It's just one of those deals.
It's true.
Yeah, but I think it's cool to kind of see where the difference is in that style of fishing, that preference kind of lie, and the pros and cons of each, and kind of the different ins and outs of both. And I think we did a good job at describing them tonight. But I know we have one more thing before we sign off here tonight. Do you want to kick that off? Let the folks know?
Yeah, real quick. On I believe the 11th. That's a Tuesday. Coming up here soon, January 11th, on the Paddle and Fin Network. There's going to be a new show. It's a fantasy fishing show, right? So we've started the fantasy, kayak bass fishing game again this year. So I've passed that. I started it right with Ken Morris when we were doing the Hooked on Wild Waters podcast. And once we restart our podcast, it will be called the River Bassin podcast. We'll focus a little bit more on river bassin. And who knows? I either going to start another podcast where I talk more tournament stuff like this, or maybe I just come on your podcast and we recap what's going on. I don't know. Who knows? Because I still am always itching to talk that stuff too. But anyway, we're going to have the fantasy game back up and running this year. And it's, I don't want to spill all the beans about it because I want you guys to listen to that podcast and understand it. But it's going to be more exciting because Paddle and Fin is taking it to another level, and it's going to be up and running sooner than it's ever been before. So we'll have a 3-week window until the first tournament, the KBF 10 Invitational and the whole trail series in Kissimmee. But what I can tell you this year is, and I think I can say this, they're actually going to do it in quarters. So it's not a whole year. So you can actually, not only is there going to be a winner per quarter, hope I'm not blowing some big surprise. I don't think it's a big deal, but you can also change you're going to be able to change your anglers. How cool is this, Bailey? So if you pick let's say, I don't know what the limit's going to be, so I don't know all the details, but let's say you, instead of 6 anglers this year, you can pick 10. It's on your team. So you have a bench, so to speak, and you can start 6 every tournament weekend. You can start 6. So in the first quarter of the year, there will be a winner. Some person will win. And again, in our fantasy game, when an angler cashes a check, if they cash a check and they won $10,000 because they won a tournament, they get 10,000 fantasy points. So now you've got 6 anglers doing that, right? And it adds up to your team's total. Here's the cool thing, man. It goes this year. It's going to go between KBF Trail Series, Hobie Bass Open Series, the Bass Nation Kayak Series, and I believe the All American is going to be a part of that as well. So there's 4 trails, and here's the cool thing: you can switch your anglers out. If you have 10 anglers, 6 anglers start a weekend. So let's say somebody's not fishing the tournament that weekend. They need to be on your bench, and you can add somebody from your bench that's in the tournament that weekend, so you can pile up making more money. Or maybe it's just maybe every angler is fishing that weekend at a tournament or a different tournament or whatever. And so-and-so is good at offshore or inshore, whatever, backwaters, creeks. You can just play to the knowledge that you know about your team and kind of add them in and pull them out, just like you can with fantasy football. So, and there'll be overall yearly winner. Listen to the podcast on the 11th for more of the Paddle and Fin. It's going to be live too. Every weekend, there's going to be one of those 4 tournament trails, have a tournament. There will be a Tuesday night live podcast about the fantasy game. And we're going to pick our anglers, who we think is going to win and stuff like that. Just kind of preview the tournament. So it's going to be a cool way to preview these events. We have a lot of podcasts that do a lot of, post coverage, like have the winners on, interview them. How'd you win? All that stuff. This is going to be a cool way we can preview the events. I think it's going to be, I think Bailey and Adam Reiser are going to do really good because this is an offshore, it's setting up to be an offshore event. There's not as much backwaters here. And so it's going to be a lot of, like Vegas, basically, although there's no sports book on this, obviously, it's going to be a lot of picking the anglers we think are going to do well. And then every week also there'll be a recap what happened last week and then the standings and all that stuff. So it's exciting, man. It's taking it to another level, and we're going to see how many people are into our sport enough to follow along with the fantasy game where they got to make some changes, to stay in it. So
yeah, heck yeah. Well, folks, put that reminder on for January 11th, and we will link the Paddle and Fin YouTube channel. It's right; they're going live on the YouTube.
Yes,
and I'm assuming and Facebook as well.
Probably. And just by the way, if you guys have never heard of this game before, it works just like DraftKings. You have a $60,000 salary cap or whatever it is, 50, and their anglers all have a salary. So you can't just, if Guillermo or someone like myself or Russ Snyder's is 24 or 25,000, that's half your salary right there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how it works. I forgot to mention that. It's a lot of fun. It really is. So you got to stay within that salary cap and figure it out.
Heck yeah. Well, folks, it'll be down below where you guys can go click on that link and it'll take you straight to it. And I think that being said, too, it'll be kind of cool to see. And obviously, I don't know in the state of kayak fishing right now if it's how that would look, but it'd be cool. So, are you familiar with the Drain the Lake that Bassmaster does, their new game?
Yes.
We got to pick like new anglers each time. That would kind of be a cool concept for the kayak deal, because I think it would help you learn more about different, it would force you to learn more about different anglers in the kayak deal, and would help just the brands themselves for like different anglers in terms of like getting their name out there, growing their personal brand, getting more people to know about them. That could be kind of cool with that concept. It almost forces you to learn more about the people competing.
Yeah, very cool. And this year, that's kind of what's happening. We increased the salaries a lot. So like, I mean, I tell you right now, Guillermo is half of he's number one. He's half your salary. So if you want to, if you want to fill out the rest of your 5 anglers with the complete other half of your salary, you know what I'm saying? Then it's going to force you to pick guys that are down there in a $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000 range instead of like a 25,000. So you have to learn other people. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's all get in there and get involved and just kind of help grow the sport. It just helps the anglers grow their followings as well, which is good for everybody. So the more attention on it all is just going to continue to help get us all collectively. We're trying to work to get the sport, I think big enough and viable enough to where we can have an elite series, which just kind of elevates the tiers below it as well. So it all kind of rising tide raises all ships sort of thing, which is the most overused phrase ever, but it's true, especially in the fishing world. But anyway, all right.
Yeah, man. I digress. Well, I appreciate you letting the folks know about that, and I appreciate you hopping on here tonight to talk with me. Really quick for the folks, before we sign off here tonight, on Monday Night Live, I will not be present. That will be Andy Full and Adam Deacon. That's going to be taking over that. I will be freezing my butt off on Mille Lacs in Minnesota. I have a ice fishing trip next week for work, and it's going to be a whopping -10 degrees on Monday, so can't wait for that. That being said, Andy Loberg is going to be joining us on Monday Night Live, so you guys can tune into that. And then Wednesday, Deacon for Business from the Bass Boat has, and I apologize if I pronounce his last name wrong. It's Joe Opiger. Basically, he's the contact for Bally Sports with Major League Fishing, implementing betting into fishing. So you guys heard a couple of rants about us talking about betting and fishing. We're actually going to talk to the guy. Deacon's going to get him on the show and actually talk to the guy who's behind it all, see how it's going to go down, what it's going to work, what their direction, their mission is. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that one. That one's going to be a really good show.
It's going to be a good one, yeah.
For folks that have tuned in and are still listening, we appreciate y'all wholeheartedly, and we'll see you guys on Monday Night Live.